That brings me to the next story I want to talk about. American Society of Magical Negroes was pulled from the theaters after 3 weeks.
Yes.
I'm very happy about that because I just posted on my Threads account, I posted that article, and I said, are we surprised that this was pulled after 3 weeks? So I got over like almost 200 replies to
Wow.
that post. It's very like a lot of people have a lot to say about that movie, the title, the trailer. Some actually saw the movie. Now, I have to say, I did not see the movie. I didn't want to see the movie. Okay. It was it was supposed to be, from what I gather, it's supposed to be a satire of
Hmm.
this racist, magical Negro trope. And for people who don't know what that racist magical Negro trope is we've pretty much seen it every year, probably for all of our lives. Where basically a black character is put in place to kind of save or be save the white main lead, and they have like powers, they have supernatural powers, or they might have some really great insight, they might be psychic, or whatever, they're just magical for some reason, and they're only there to help protect the white lead. And this is something that is very racist because, obviously, when our ancestors were enslaved, we were there, especially black women, we were supposed to protect the master at all times. We were supposed to care for their children, nurse their children, protect their children. So this is kind of where it all came from. And there are hundreds of movies that has this racist trope. You can go on Wikipedia
Mm.
and type in magical Negro trope, and you all these movies will pop up for you. One of the ones that I know, that just off the top of my head, is the Green Mile. Also I think Vagabonds, where Will Smith is like he helps this like guy learn how to play golf. I mean, it's so many stories that we just don't kind of we just kind of accepted and just kind of rolled with it.
Mhm.
We didn't really know really that's what the trope was, right? So when we saw this movie, when we saw the title, anything with Negroes in it, I kind of like, what is it? Where is this going? And then seeing the trailer, I just didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
And yes, it was the satire. It was supposed to kind of make fun of this trope, but I don't want to see it. I don't care if it's a romantic comedy. I don't care if it's a satire. I don't care if it's a comedy. I don't want to see it. I don't want any hints of it. I don't want I don't want to see it. And most people agree, and not that I post things for people to agree, but most people agree. They was like, the title and the trailer just turned me off, right?
I think you also assume, though, that people are familiar with the concept of the magical Negro. Like, I'm not sure if people maybe outside of like arts or comics or like certain creative spaces would understand that term, because we might see magical Negro. What is this about? Even without seeing the trailer, you might assume that, oh, it might be a civil rights piece or maybe another era where the term colored or Negro was used. I want to say Negro actually preceded colored. Yeah, like Negro
Mm-hmm.
was around Carter G. Woodson's time, like
Negro.
National Negro Health Week and stuff like that, National Minority Health Month became something from the Negro Health Week movement. So it
Mm-hmm.
used to be Negro Health Week, then it became um, National Minority Health Month. But again, so Negro preceded even colored. So I'm even wrong with saying civil rights movement because some people haven't used Negro in like, about 100 years or so. So it's like, I'm not sure most people would see Negro and accept it. And then most people would even be familiar with the phrase magical Negro and that it
Mm-hmm.
was referring to satire.
Right. So I pulled up the Wikipedia article. Okay, some examples of the magical Negro trope was Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. She played Oda Mae Brown.
Mm.
Um, Morgan Freeman, and he played in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He played Azim. Um, let's see some other ones. Morgan Freeman, he played Ellis Boyd Redding in the Shawshank Redemption.
Mm.
Carl Weathers played Chubbs in Happy Gilmore. Shaquille O'Neal in Kazam. Chris Tucker and The Fifth Element. And it's and that was in the 1990s. Some more modern movies. We have Billy Porter and Cinderella. We have back in the 2010s, we have let's see, Passengers. Lawrence Fishburne, he was the Chief Gus Mancuso in The Passengers. Donald Glover in The Martian. I mean, there's plenty of examples.
I'm reviewing this
Um,
list. I had no idea, one, that someone had curated this list, and two, I didn't know Spike Lee kind of coined the term a little bit, or at least popularized it in 2001 because he gave some college campus talks and used some of the movies you mentioned as
mhm.
examples, but specifically the Green Mile, because I think most people can relate back to the Green Mile. I mean, we had that on VHS, it was two tapes. Do you remember that? My gosh, but yeah, and totally forgot about Oda Mae Brown and Ghost. Man, that's
Yeah, that was a big
magical
one of the
negress. Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the main ones. So it, I think the difference, I think, back in the 1990s to 2000s, like we at that point we were still accepting it. Like it wasn't a huge big deal. But I think after George 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 Floyd, I think we all were done.
Hmm.
We were done. Well, most of us anyway, because obviously some people agreed to that film. Um, but we were done. Like and now, especially with the indie community, there are so many Black creators who is creating content, including myself, that we want to see ourselves in a world where racism and inequity and stereotypes are no longer exist. We want to see we want to be in the fantasy world where we're happy and we're not worried about driving while Black or flying while Black. We
Yeah.
want we're just kind of just all together and united for this one common goal. So I was not surprised. It actually ended up making $2.4 million. The
Yikes on a bike.
American yeah, the American Society of Magical Negroes ended up making $2.4 million. And obviously it costs more to make, so we know they lost a lot of money. But it's just a shame that um, first of all, if it was a satire, I kind of I understand where they were going with it, but we're just tired. Like there's so many other stories that you can tell um, that doesn't have anything to do with racist tropes.
Yeah.
There's so many other movies. So, and speaking of that, the Good Times reboot, the cartoon. I think it premieres either tomorrow, like next week. I think
Oh, today. Today's the
today.
day.
So
April 12th. Wow. Yeah.
I actually am going to try to watch at least one or two episodes just to get a more informed opinion. I was not going to waste any money going to a movie theater to see a movie, but I already have Netflix, so I'm going to go ahead and see one or two episodes. So when we come back, when we do our next pod, we're going to talk about it. We're going to
I
talk
just
about
wonder if they'll take people's curiosity as genuine interest. And so I've been afraid of like watching it the first day, but I do want to see it because I'm like, I
it.
want
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I think they're going to have a very high number. I think they're going to have a big number of people wanting to see it and see it on the first night. Because we were curious to see if this is really what we think this is going to be. But it reminded me of Bebe's Kids. Like when I saw the baby and stuff,
Yeah.
it reminded me of Bebe's Kids.
But I
Um,
would say Robin Harris was also a beloved comedian, and I think people was familiar with his
mhm,
comedic style and like his satire and making fun of like Bebe's kids and Bebe, and like everybody kind of knew somebody that ended up being a single mother. And
yeah,
just to make clear, typically people aren't single mothers by choice. It's a whole,
mhm,
stereotype thing, and we won't do any bashing Black women on here. But again,
absolutely.
it made me think of the same thing, Bebe's kids. But I think people are turned off a little bit by seeing Seth MacFarlane and seeing like, okay, we know where this is going. Like you
Hmm.
have a brilliant baby genius on Family Guy that's white, but then we got a drug dealing baby that's Black in this Good
Right,
Times
right,
Bible.
right.
So, mm,
And Another interesting, thing is that Carl Jones, who's behind the Boondocks, walked away from this project. Let me see if I can pull up the actual quote. Um,
And good for him because the Boondocks was brilliant, and it was based
mhm,
on a comic strip by Aaron McGruder, and we love us some Boondocks, okay? So,
right.
and it dealt with serious issues with the nuance that they deserve. And the other thing that I don't know if people realize with the Boondocks and trying to draw these false comparisons, the Boondocks were actually typically verbatim like reenactments of the actual events that had occurred. Whereas
Mhm.
Good Times isn't doing that. It's feeding into, again, we haven't watched it yet, but it's feeding into already pre-existing like negative
Tropes.
stereotypes. And then we also had Huey juxtaposed with Riley. And so we got to see both like parts of the Black struggle that
Mhm.
persists, like the intellectual, the revolutionary, like let's reimagine, overthrow the system. And then we got well, I'm here and I'm in this system and I deserve to be here, in Riley, who's just, enjoying hip hop and doing his thing and adopting some of the not so good things from these
Mhm.
I love me some hip hop, but he's adopting some of these behaviors, with Gangstalicious and Thugnificent and all. And I want to say Carl Jones voiced Thugnificent. So
I have to go back. Honestly, I have to go back and watch it because it's on Max. So I'm going to stream it just so I can kind of add more to this conversation because we're going to be talking about Good Times again, I'm
oh,
sure.
absolutely,
But the
absolutely.
the actual quote from Carl Jones, he said, "For the record, this was posted 13 hours ago. It says, for the record, I was involved with the Good Times animated series in the very, very beginning, but due to creative differences, I had to walk away. So I haven't even seen one episode or script of this version of the show." So he's making it very clear he ain't had nothing to do with it. He ain't had nothing to do with that.
Like my name ain't in it. Like, He was like
Uh
very beginning. I haven't
right,
seen the script as is or the series
right,
episode. He's like, no.
right. Beyonce. Let's talk about Beyonce's album,
Beyonce.
Cowboy Carter. I personally love the album. I actually was very surprised. I did not think I was going to like it. I was like, well, she's just doing Beyonce again. But I actually love the album.
What was your
Um,
favorite track so far?
America was it American
Requiem? American
yeah,
Requiem?
I can't say those words. Of course, the one with Miley Cyrus and Two Hands to Heaven
Mm.
and her rendition of Blackbird.
Oh, Blackbird was so
Mhm.
beautiful. Oh
Yeah,
my
he
goodness.
did a good
I will
job.
say, did you see that Levi's jean sales are up? They said.
Yes, and did you see they changed their profile name to be Levi's with two eyes?
I
They
love it.
did. I
See,
love it.
take your
I
free
love it.
marketing, okay?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I mean, she always leaves her footprint in everything she does.
Everywhere in everything that she
Mhm.
does. Just beautiful. We gotta
Yeah,
love Queen Bee. We gotta love
yeah.
her. And
But
we
not
are both,
everybody
some of
loves
us can
her.
be both black and southern and
Yeah.
country. So just for
Well,
the record, since apparently we have to make that clear here, because yes, and I loved on Homecoming. That's one of my favorite quotes for her. And I'm like, people forget Beyonce in country. But if
hmm
people saw the Homecoming Coachella performance and then listened to the live album, one of the things she said on the documentary was, if my country can do it, I'm just putting a blank there since we family friendly here, but if my country arts can do it, then anybody can do it. So that got me again through my dissertation, through having my second child. I was like, she right, if my country can
hmm
do it, somebody else can do it. So I want to inspire somebody else. So yes, Beyonce is country, and many of us are Black, Southern, and country.
hmm
Cowboy culture is
and
ours.
yeah, yeah, and let me just so I sent you the Instagram post
Mhm.
about the white nursing student who
Yes.
made very racist comments about Beyonce. So she says, "I wish I meant that in the nicest way." Oh no, no, no. Okay, let me back up. She says, even though Black people and their ancestors were raised in the country, they can't be country because their ancestors were enslaved. I wish I meant that in the nicest way. Your great granny and grandpas, they was picking, okay? They wasn't planting. Just keep that in mind. They wasn't making money. They was getting sold for money. And so this girl is a student at the Indiana State University.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana State University.
Her name's
Um,
Asa Blanton, so we can name her because we hope she's never a nurse and doesn't treat anybody that we know.
and unfortunately, there are nurses who do feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
who are very who still define our culture based on our history, being enslaved. It doesn't, obviously we know our ancestors were enslaved, but they were stronger. They had, they were more resilient than them. They worked harder than them, obviously. They built this country. So we should be able to, our ancestors and their descendants should be able to claim anything we want to claim when it comes to America. Um, but it was just interesting. And I don't think the university has done anything about her yet.
Girl, they released that weak statement on Monday about her comments not aligning with their institutional values, and they're reaffirming their commitment to fostering an inclusive environment. Whatever. Like, that is so vague. And I love that students protested, and they literally, there's a whole big, I don't know if you saw the video of people protesting yet, but no, no, no. People are
He
saying
might end up
silence is
leaving.
betrayal, and if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. Like, these students are serious about protesting.
Hmm.
And I see Dr. John Paul, he's been talking out on social media about Indiana State University's like inaction and racist white students like needing to be, and people are saying she should not even be allowed to continue in the nursing major. And I like that people said many think more action should be taken considering Blanton studying to be a nurse and the possibility of her racial bias adding to disparities already plaguing Black people in the healthcare industry. So literally what we were just talking about during the health segment on how these cultural challenges, including just a structural, how this can impact
Hmm.
healthcare.
Hmm. Because she'll be one of those nurses that don't listen, don't want to
Mm-hmm.
believe her patient of color, and it can lead to negative outcomes. And actually, to come to think of it, out, as a nursing student and as a clinical instructor, there are guidelines in our nursing handbook that does talk against racist
Mm-hmm.
and discrimination. So I'm not sure why the university has not addressed this situation, meaning kicking her out the program, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming. Um, all right. So you mentioned Divine Joy Randolph.
Oh my gosh, yes. I think it's Davine. Is it Davine?
Davine,
Davine Joy? Her name is
girl.
beautiful. I love that for her. And I just love her. And I honestly did not know about her until this award season. I mean, she swept the award season. I think she's gotten like a BAFTA. She's gotten an Oscar now. And it was really that Oscar moment that was impactful to me. The quote that she said was, I always wanted to be different. And now I realize that I just need to be myself. And that was just impactful to me because, Carla, I'm myself as a Gullah Geechee farm girl. I've always been into weird stuff, and I like horror. So we'll be talking about a lot of horror related comics and it's like supernatural stuff. And I just didn't know there was this big blurred community. And I thought I had to be one of the cool kids. And what does that even mean? Like, I was a band geek. I wasn't gonna be cool to begin with. But I mean, now in retrospect, I'm like, I think I'm cool. Like, I like band and I like jazz and hip hop and horror stuff. And so just her saying that was just a very powerful moment. And I'm sure a lot of other people took the same like empowerment from her, standing up on this acclaimed stage at this point in her life and saying that I just need to be myself. And so
Mhm.
that's where I'm at. As I joke with my husband, I'm approaching a midlife crisis, and he's like, 35 is not midlife, and I'm like, it's actually proven that it's a range. It's a range. So like that 35, now that we're living longer, it's really like that 35 to 55 window. That's kind of like
Mhm.
middle age of
Mhm.
in midlife. And so just realizing that in space, who does it benefit for me to code switch or for me to like water myself down or dim my light? And it's like, that's not really helpful. So I hope a lot of other Black women and all of our listeners are taking that message from her, whether they know her or not, or can relate to her in any other way, but just the message of being yourself, like not wanting to be anything different, but just being yourself.
Mhm. And sitting in your truth, being yourself, also not feeling obliged to cater or police your opinions or voice. Twice this week, I was challenged on social media about an opinion that I had about X-Men and how, oh, girl, we about to get into the X-Men, girl.
Oh, but get next one.
But X-Men, the writing is Infinity War, Endgame,
Yes. I
Iron
saw you put
Man,
it in that
Black
caliber.
Panther.
Yes.
Yes, that is where X-Men 97 is, right?
Yes.
I'm so upset that Disney fired the writer. And what I think is what I think happened was they found his OnlyFans account. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna say this though, because let's move into comics at this
Girl,
point.
because what? You got my mouth open over here. I'm
Girl,
like, wait.
they fired Bo DeMaio. He had just submitted season 2. They fired him. And the rumor is it was because of his OnlyFans account, right? Let me tell you this. There's a reason why writers went on strike last year. They don't get paid anything. So why are you knocking this man? Now, if this is true, again, I don't know if this is true. This is
Girl, you got me
allegedly.
going down the
I
rabbit
don't
hole.
know. Look, I'm not going over the OnlyFans either, girl. I'm not to confirm it. But allegedly he has an OnlyFans account. And why are you firing this man for trying to put food on his table? Like, I don't understand why people are so judgmental, especially Disney. Why is Disney so judgmental?
Because historically they're a family friendly company. Marvel's parent company, which is Disney, is family friendly.
Family friendly people's paychecks.
They said the claims are from him, from Snyder. So yeah, so they said that. But people are also saying DeMaio wasn't the easiest to work with. He was an absolute nightmare to do on a daily basis. What? And Snyder alleged that his OnlyFans account was a major sticking point. He said executives reportedly found content on the site unsettling and creepy. Wait, but who found it? If you are
Exactly.
family, well, I've never logged on to OnlyFans. I can say that on here.
Yeah.
How did you
How did
find
they
it?
know about it?
Like how'd you that's it. So I have questions. Like, how did you find it? But I will give this disclaimer though, that if I had pretty feet, or at least what I think that pretty feet they're looking for, I would be on Feet Finder, girl. I don't know if you saw that churchy skit
Somebody
with
else said that. Did you say that to me earlier? Somebody else told me
did
that.
you see Kev on stage? He posted the churchy skit a few days ago. And the congregant, she said she's making $25,000 a month selling feet pictures on Feet Finder or OnlyFans or whatever. I don't remember the differences in the app.
You know what? More power to them, because at this in this day and age, you need multiple streams of income to pay your rent or pay your mortgage. So I'm not knocking
When I put
anything.
my feet out there, Carla, just make sure you go like a few pictures, send them share the link.
Well, somebody said the other day, they was like, "You have pretty hands." I was like, "Thank
Oh, is
you."
there like
So
a
you
hand
might see my
finder,
hands.
girl? Put some lotion on my
Yeah,
hands.
I just get my I get a manicure. I'm a.
Look, look.
All right, girl. So another story. We're gonna have to girl, we got so much to talk about. We're gonna have to wait till next week to talk about a lot of this stuff. But I did want to talk about um 2 more stories.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about your experience without naming the store owner.
Okay.
Okay, because we might want to interview
I know, right?
them.
But I will just
Okay.
say, I won't even say where it was, but somewhere in the United States of America, I frequented a Black-owned comic book store. And it was very superhero themed, some fantasy, and some sci-fi, things like that. And so, but one of the things I noticed was notably missing. I was like, there's not that many Black comic book authors, work in here. And so, and some of them do have superheroes. Some Black comic book writers and illustrators, they do have superhero themed stories. And so when I asked the shop owner, they said that, based on the demographic that was in their locale, that it wouldn't sell. But I also noticed when I shared some of those titles, I'm like, oh, which ones are your favorite? The owner also wasn't familiar. And so it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Their shop had been there in that space for about 15 years, and overall in that city for 30 years. And so while I can understand, I just think it reminded me, it was reminiscent of the same argument that people made about Black Panther. like, oh, it's not going to sell because it's a Black lead or a primarily Black cast. And Black people have proven time and time again the power of our purse,
Mhm.
that, this is it's false. Like, where is the idea coming from that we don't want these things or wouldn't purchase it? And also the idea that only we will purchase those things.
That's
So it's
it right
also
there.
other communities as
That's it
well.
right
And it's
there.
like, why must we always consume media that wasn't designed for us or about us? But when it comes to expecting other people to purchase things that prioritize our stories and our culture, we can't expect the same. So that kind of
Right.
excuse, it was very disappointing. I was just like, I don't think I even responded to him. It was kind of like a, okay, like, all right then. Like, let me still support your Black owned
Right.
business with the understanding that you're
Mhm.
not supporting other Black people who love comic books and
Mhm.
that are doing
Yeah.
graphic design and illustrating in this space. And so it was just very disappointing because I know many incredibly talented Black comic book artists and writers, and their work is incredible. Like, I'm a part of a Black comic books group, and so we only read and prioritize Black comic books. And the university I'm at, we have the Watson comic book collection, which has over 140,000 comic books, but they're not, not just by Black authors.
Mhm.
But it was just very disappointing, that experience. I wasn't expecting, like, me, my husband purposefully sought out a Black owned comic book store. And it was just one of our criteria. We were looking for any comic book store where we were, but we were hoping for it to be Black owned, woman owned, some type of diversity there, and was excited that that was the center we
Mhm.
found. But yeah, just very disappointing that that was their
Mhm.
rationale for not carrying. I didn't see any. And
Mhm.
even just thinking about like sci-fi, I immediately told me they had this whole wall on Star Trek, which is incredible. Obviously it's groundbreaking, the most popular space odyssey of all time. So they had this entire wall dedicated to Star Trek, and I was like, if Black people like sci-fi, how you ain't heard about Bitter Root by
Mhm.
Chuck Brown, Sanford Green, and who am I forgetting? David Walker. Like,
Mhm.
how have you not? And then my good friend John Jennings did all the back matter for these. My good friend Kiana Witt, I told you, she's in the she created the Black comic books group that I'm in here, and she actually is working to develop comic studies in a working group more rigorously here. So I'm also part of that initiative as well. And so it's just, when I think about sci-fi and things like that, I'm like, there's Black women that are writing about conjure studies and conjuring and hoodoo and horror. And we got Black women writing about Kiana shouted out Gullah folklore in the very first back matter for Bitterroot. And so, but like I said, John Jennings curated that collection. So I'm talking, like, when you're thinking about sci-fi and fantasy and Afrofuturism, we have so many Black people in this space. And
Mhm.
so it was, Octavia Butler. How you got all these Star Trek novels and paraphernalia, but you don't have no Octavia Butler? I mean, many of us Octavia fans have long said we should have had series and multiple, things at this point. But the fact that we haven't is just so ridiculous.
Mhm.
But to his point,
Yeah.
when he's answered that, I'm like, if he's thinking this and you're a Black man, then who else is thinking that this wouldn't be profitable and we shouldn't have this here?
Yeah. And to be fair, we don't know what his experience was, when he first opened up the bookstore. We had that bookstore um in South Carolina or North Carolina. There was the first Black um bookstore owned by a Black family, and the Liberation Station, and they had to shut down because of the racist
Oh, North
attack. So
Carolina. North
yeah,
Carolina.
so at the end of the day, we don't know what his experience was, but you're right. There are, even if it's a predominantly white area, there are white readers who love to read Black centered stories. And we have proof of that because Black Panther and Wakanda Forever has made a combined total of, I think, close to 2 billion.
And
Close
isn't
to
it
two
one of, like,
billion.
the top 5 or top 10
Mm-hmm.
best-selling movies of all
Right.
time, like,
And
regardless of genre?
right. And that's because some white people went like to see it. So, you know, I think it's it's a very complex issue when when you have your own business, because you, at the end of the day, you have to feed your family. So I get it. But you're right. It ain't at least a cart, like the
A
shelf
side
of.
piece of Octavia Butler? Like, so we gonna talk about science fiction.
Right.
I mean, come on. Yeah, of
Right.
all the works, maybe not all the Black authored works, but surely Octavia Butler.
Right. All right, so that brings us to I'm not gonna be able to get to X-Men 97. We can save it for next
Oh,
week.
yeah. Yeah.
But let's talk about Octavia Butler
Yes.
and Nnedi Okorafor.
Girl.
So I want to preface this with saying I do respect Nnedi Okorafor. I really loved her. I didn't actually know who she was until I read her Wakanda Forever series. Okay.
Mhm.
So I think it's Wakanda Forever. I think it's either Black Panther or Wakanda Forever, but she has a series that she wrote. I can't find it now, but I loved it. I love the series. I love it. I was like, well, she's a really good writer. So I kind of started following her on Instagram. Um, but this somehow, I don't know how I found this story. It popped up on my feed, but back in 2022, this is how it kind of all got started. Back in 2022, someone asked her, who are your top 10 influences and top 10 inspiration? Who do you look for? Who inspired you? And so I think you had mentioned that all the people on the list were African, right? African. I didn't go back and look at the names, to see who they were, but she didn't list Octavia Butler. Okay. Most recently, she someone kind of called her out for that. I don't know how it got kind of reintroduced, but someone called her out for that and said, how come you didn't mention Octavia Butler? Because we can definitely see her influence in your work. So she said, she kind of doubled down and said, no, Octavia Butler did not inspire me. I'm more African futuristic. I'm not Afrofuturistic. I'm African futuristic. But then the plot thickens. Someone actually called her out. Okay. So the book Dawn by Octavia Butler, published in 1987, it starts off with 3 lines: alive, still alive, alive again. Okay. Okorafor's Book of Phoenix, published in 2015, starts off with the same 3 sentences: alive, still alive, alive again. So as a writer, I do understand that you're going to have similar, sentence structure. You're going to have similar things kind of you might have a story from 10 years ago. You might write about the same thing. You're going to have similar wording and word patterns and things like that. But this is verbatim, structured the same exact way. So I'm not saying I'm not saying anything. I'm not accusing her anything. But to say that Octavia Butler has not influenced your work, I think is questionable. I'm gonna say it like that. So, what do you think? I know this is a really a tough topic.
Oh,
I
girl,
think
it's a
that
tough topic for
it's
several
very.
reasons.
I know I think it's very complex because she is a fellow
Mhm.
writer. She's a Black woman. Um, but I think where people are upset with her is that she doubled down and said, no, Octavia Butler did not influence my work. And I think the reason why, and people might say, well, why, she doesn't have to say that. It's not a big deal. Well, actually, it is a big deal. And here's why. First of all, you are living in a country where Black women have consistently been dismissed, devalued, and often not celebrated till after they're dead.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is the same case here. So Nnedi Okorafor, she's one of the most powerful, one of the most influential Black writers here in this country.
Yeah.
She just like back in maybe a year or two ago, she just sold the rights to her book for 7 figures. So she has a lot of influence. So I feel kind of slighted when
Yeah.
you're not giving credit to a Black African American woman that is clear that you've been influenced by.
And you
It's
don't include
clear.
certain parts of the diaspora in
Mhm.
your list. And it's like, sure, if you had to me, if you had clarified that this list is just your African influences, or maybe even Nigerian or Nigerian American, or influences, where it wasn't just these are your influences overall, it's like you said, it's hard to believe that list wouldn't include Octavia, especially when she just gave an interview in 2023. I want to say it was the fall of 2023, and she talked about her coming along like in this second generation of like Black science fiction or Black speculative fiction work. She mentions that the first generation, includes like Samuel Delany, Octavia Butler. She said then you have Tananarive Due, Steve Barnes, and Nalo Hopkinson. And then people like me came along right after that. So you acknowledge you came along right after that. So why weren't any of these writers on your list? You said in an interview, but then you release this official list that kind of contradicts what you said in another interview. And so it makes me think like, okay, who was she talking to? Did your audience change your response? So it's just, and it, like, whereas Twitter, I mean, not that Twitter is more permanent than like an interview, but you knew that social media has the potential, like you said, your influence, and
especially Black Twitter.
Come on. So you knew this was going to spread quicker among different age groups versus those who may come across this. I mean, this interview she did was in Anscape, and it was about African, it was labeled African futurism, because then there's also the fact that she considers herself a Nigerian American science fiction writer and pioneer of African futurism and African Jujuism genres. When one, she wasn't the first to even say those, so just put that out there. But then this split from, well, I'm not Afrofuturism, I'm African futurism. And it's like Afro already includes the diaspora, the global South, the Caribbean, the African continent, and Black Americans. So why then separate yourself further? And so this list kind of was like, I think people's already like, I feel like the list was like the tipping point for people like, okay, all right. So you built your multi-million-dollar career, and now, okay, you're just African futures. Okay. Right. I mean, there's a reason why in my research, when I use Afrofuturism concepts, I say faith, food, and Black futures. Like it's across the diaspora. Black is, inclusive of the entire diaspora. But I just have questions that I could sit down with her and ask her. It would be, why this need to ensure that your legacy is only associated with African futurism and African Jujuism. Like we got hoodoo here in the South. We got hoodoo and Gullah Geechee culture, which is more spirituality and health and well-being, versus voodoo, that's a religion, which is also part of the diaspora. And then there's other different religions and faiths in, West Africa and other parts of the African continent. And so it's just interesting. Like even the term juju, like, like I got bad juju or mojo work and conjuring. Again, very diaspora, not just distinct to the African continent. And sure, we say it's the motherland. Again, I just have questions around what is her intentions, and why is that her choice? Like, why is that specific framing? Because how we frame things and how we tell stories matter. So I'm curious of the intention behind her framing and separation. She obviously benefited from initially being lumped in with Afrofuturism and Black speculative fiction.
There it is.
So now why the separation, I guess. If I was 50, maybe I'd pop my collar and pop my ish too and be like, hey, I only,
I'm trying to find the book that she wrote. But that comic books are American.
Wakanda forever. It's Marvel. Marvel's right. American.
Marvel is, comic books are centered, comic books are everywhere. But, when we first refer to comic books, we're referring to the American version of, comics. We're not talking about manga. We're not talking about, I get manga is the other one. But you have benefited from African American consumption of your work. But when someone asks you, has Octavia Butler influenced your work, and you deny that, that is a slap in the face. That is a slap in the face. Now, I do understand that she wants to promote her culture, which is great. I like, for me, the center of my work is Black women, but I cannot sit here and say that Stan Lee, a white man, did not influence my work. That is you cannot concede. I just can't wrap my head around it. and then even and I would say like so, and it just makes me so upset that someone would deny Butler's influence on their work when you have 3 lines in one of your books that's verbatim Octavia Butler. So it just, like you said, I just have more questions. I would love to have her, interview her one day, if she even wants to be interviewed by us at this point. But I would love to ask her some questions, like why does she feel like why do you have to separate yourself from us? We welcome music, we welcome the culture, we welcome the food, we welcome the names, our because we see the connection. We're connected to them. These are our cousins, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like they don't welcome us.
Girl, and
And
it just goes back to the diaspora wars. And I'm in a very diaspora household. My husband's family is West Indian or Caribbean. And it just makes me think of that sometimes, like how, again, it's like easier to separate ourselves than to come together. But my kids are just as much West Indian as they are, American. Like they're always going to be Black American. They're always going to be
right.
Dominican. They're also going to be Gullah Geechee. Like all of these things can coexist. I don't need to downplay like my husband's culture to lift mine up. Like it's just super
Mhm.
weird to me that this was her choice. But like you said, I would love the opportunity to ask because let's keep the open conversation. But I think definitely in terms of where we're at right now, like you said, just the fact that we're all embracing each other and history and just lifting up Black people, why then separate and parse out, like only make yourself for these certain Black people? At least that's how it looks, that's how it reads. But I would welcome her to clarify her intentions and her
Right.
desires because only she can do that and clarify that. And I want to say maybe she did. I've been trying to see if I can find it on social media, like how she addressed and responded. I don't know if you came across that, but I wanted to see how she did respond to people and justify it. Because I'm sure, I mean,
The last time I saw, like, this was earlier this week, where a reader tweeted out screenshots of the first page of her book, in Octavia Butler's book, and I didn't see a response from her. So, and I don't think she will respond to that. But hopefully she will gain some clarity. Hopefully she has the right people around her to just kind of help her understand that this is not a good look. Like that is not something you don't want to tell the base of your audience that one of their favorite authors is,
yeah,
you
and see
want to
what's
influence.
crazy is I searched her on Twitter just now, and the first thing that comes up, it says, I write African futurism, not Afrofuturism. The distinction matters. And she wrote it 3 times, and at the end, she said the distinction matters in all caps. Damn it. So you
Okay.
feel some type of way. You are really, this is how you feel. That's why I said I don't really know what she can say at this point. I don't know. I can't see the quote tweets.
Yeah, it's not a good look. So, but one day when we get our media kit together, we are going. I'm gonna reach out to her and invite her to talk to her. Not, I mean, but I'm not gonna sit here and bash this incredible author. She has
Sure,
done really
absolutely.
amazing things for Black women. She is, she's doing it, but it's a little disappointing to see that she's not giving credit to someone that has clearly influenced her work.
It's
So,
like if you were okay. I'm trying to be positive here and as kind and gracious as you are, Carla, because I'm like, if this she said it with her whole chest. She said
mhm,
it thrice and on multiple occasions. And so
in
I'm just
all
like,
caps.
then all caps and stand 10 toes down. Why you
Mhm,
ain't sell yourself just on the African continent and market there if that's who you're. And again,
mhm,
I know it's not to say we can't center ourselves in our own stories and sell that to anybody. But
mhm,
again, to me, to make this type of distinction amongst
mhm.
ourselves, just
In America,
yeah.
you're not in Africa. You're in America.
It would be like to me, like saying like I write for Chicago and Chicago only Chicago people read my stuff. So it
And
matters.
you right, and you all up in South Carolina. People, so it's interesting. We will reach out to her, kind of when things kind of calm down. We will. And she
Carla's
probably
gonna reach out to Nnedi, y'all.
she will
Carla. Just so we're
she
clear.
probably will ignore us, but at least we tried. So but that is it. I actually have to go to work tonight. So I actually cannot. I want to talk about our next show. We're going to talk about Storm. We're going to talk
Yes.
about the casting of Storm. We're going to talk about whitewashing of Storm, the history of that. Going to talk about Halle Berry's portrayal of Storm, which she did what she could with the role she was given. And we're going to talk about X-Men 97 too.
Oh man.
Um, yeah. So, and then we can, we have here the superhero of the week. We'll also share our superhero of the week on the next show as well.
Yes, yes.
So, and then we have a guest. I don't want to announce the guest in case things fall through, but we also have a guest, a really incredible, phenomenal woman that we'll have
We
on the.
actually got some incredible guests coming up. So yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. So, all right, I think that is it. So I am Moon the storyteller, and we will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.